Doors slammed and the driver floored the gas pedal, peeling out and leaving behind the faint smell of burnt rubber. For a moment, JD was too dumbstruck to move. Then, his flashlight beam illuminated a shapeless form on the pavement where the vehicle had been. He jogged closer, wondering if the driver had hit a deer. But no, unless it was a very small deer. Perhaps a dog? He grimaced at the thought of having to move the carcass, but he also couldn't just leave it in the middle of the road to be run over repeatedly. No other drivers should have to deal with it. He stopped short when his light was strong enough to reveal that the figure on the road was covered with clothing, not fur. His stomach lurched, and he sprinted for the figure, only taking his eyes off it long enough to check his cell phone screen. No signal. He muttered something between a curse and a prayer as he got closer, and his mind raced. Was this a hit-and-run accident? But who would be out on the highway at this hour? Besides himself? A hitchhiker? But where did he or she come from? He hadn't seen anyone walking along the highway earlier, and not once in all the times he'd gone running in the middle of the night. If only he'd been able to see the license plate. He reached the huddled form on the ground. Ratty, shoulder-length blonde hair, and a slim, slight figure indicated that it was a woman. JD's heart began to pound. There was something familiar about the person on the ground. He reached for the throat to check for a pulse, and his flashlight beam fell across the pale, bruised face of RaeLynn Shaffer. He drew back and blinked, not sure if his eyes in the darkness were playing tricks on him. He felt a weak pulse, and a slight gurgle escaped the young woman's throat. Questions spun in his mind. Where had she come from? What had happened to her? It was impossible to see the extent of her injuries, and he knew that moving her could be dangerously risky, paralyzing, or even killing her. But he couldn't call for help, and leaving her on the road was... The blare of another 18-wheeler's air horn, coming from behind them, sent a chill down his spine, and made up his mind. There was no way the trucker would see them before he rounded the curve, and by then it would be too late for him to stop. In a flash, he scooped RaeLynn up in his arms and dashed for the opposite side of the highway. She seemed no heavier than an armful of feathers, as fragile as delicate crystal or fine china. He grimaced as the truck blasted by behind him, the horn sounding frantic to his ears, and he was sure that the sight of him running across the rig's path with the unconscious woman in his arms had taken several years off the trucker's life. He gritted his teeth and kept running. He didn't stop till he reached the Black Horse Campground's door.